Reality Check with Craig Price.
Oh, right, sorry.
I'm an idiot.
4 minutes in and I'm already wrong.
I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me! Craig, shut up.
Hey, I need you guys to do these things.
You're like a beautiful mind. I'm more like Forrest Gump. So welcome to another Reality Check with Craig Price. I am your host, Craig Price. We got a great show for you today. We've got Kelly Kimberly with Kimberly Public Affairs, and I specifically brought her on this week. I talked to her last week so I would be here for you guys on Tuesday. Normally I wait several weeks from recording to release because my schedule can get so busy sometimes that I can't do this on a weekly basis. I have to do 5 interviews in 1 week, and maybe I do 2 weeks without an interview at all. But this way I've got them stored up so you will have content every week. But this week I rushed this one because I really wanted to talk to Kelly Kimberly. I really wanted to talk to somebody who was in PR crisis management to talk about all the stupid things that are going on right now. And we got to a lot of them. We got to the big one. The main PR blunder that we're dealing with on a daily basis the last week and a half is Anthony Weiner. I know you're tired of hearing all the puns, all the double entendres. It's on the news. They're showing blurry pictures. You've got kids that you've got to rush out of the room every time you watch Brian Williams because he's going to talk about the Weiner, and then you have to explain to the young child, who probably already knows because Weiner is probably the most childish thing you could call it. But here we've got an elected official sending pictures of his namesake to young women. Bad move. Married, unmarried, if you're single, sending texted pictures, and we know this from Brett Favre, we know this from other people, bad move. It is not the way you want to introduce yourself. Secondly, if you don't know how to use social media, don't use it as a subterfuge. Don't use it as a way to avoid your wife, to be secretive, because if you don't know how to use it properly, you're going to do exactly what Anthony Weiner did and screw up. You are going to expose yourself to the entire world. You're worried about your wife finding out? Well, CNN found out. And then ABC, everybody found out. It was on the Today Show. It's on the Daily Show. It's everywhere. So the fact that you think you can get away with this stuff is just mind-boggling to me. And then to lie about it. And to blame other people. When you know it is you. That picture is you. You know it's you. If you don't know it's you, you shouldn't be sending pictures because your memory is not good enough to know what you've done. Lying entails a memory, and if you can't remember what a picture of your own junk looks like, you are not going to make it through a regular lie. That is just my opinion. So to lie through it, and then he's blaming other people, and it's hacking, it's not hacking, and I just thought he made so many different mistakes that I really wanted to get an opinion on it. So midweek last week, I ran down to her office. She was very kind enough to host me at her office, and we recorded this, and I wanted to ask her some questions about public relation crisis management because I think a lot of people only look at it as politicians' way of weaseling out of things. John Edward uses it. We've got Mark Sanford, the guy who went on the Appalachian Trail and somehow ended up in Brazil with a mistress. He uses it. They all use public relations crisis management, and at some point businesses do too. But I wanted to bring her down to talk about other situations where public relations crisis management is essential, not only as a celebrity, which most of us are, right? We're all celebrities in our own mind, but how normal folks can use and utilize public relations, and if they get in a situation, what's the best way to handle it? It's probably best that I just shut up right now because I'm sure some other Weiner joke is going to come flying. I got so many that I want to say that I can't. I mean, this is, as a former comedian, this is what God was for, is to shower us upon these wonderful gifts of other people's humiliation that we can show to the world. Because we've got so many things I want to say, but if I say them, I will have to hire somebody to represent me in my public relations campaign. So without further ado, let me give you Kelly Kimberly.
Oh, nice.
It's for work, though. But that's what we end up doing is my wife's got a limited schedule, so we go on miniature vacations, usually long extended weekends, somewhere.
Same here. My husband owns a restaurant, so if he closes a restaurant, I get to go somewhere with him. So we're going over the 4th to San Francisco.
Ooh. And then it's a restaurant-related
Well, we have to eat, of course.
Oh, yeah, and then you can just write it all off because you're sampling the wares of the competition, or you're learning new recipes, or you're getting more new ideas on how to eat and things like that. So I'm here with Kelly Kimberly, who's a PR maven. And
wow.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure people realize that you're not just some schmo I picked off the street.
That's right.
You're actually, what I want to talk to you specifically because you're a PR crisis expert.
Yeah, I do a lot in crisis and issues management.
And I think that's when most people think about nowadays, unfortunately, is when they think about PR, because it's the only time you ever hear it, is when people are managing a problem.
Lately, that seems to be the case.
Well, it's been that way for, I would say, a good 10, 15 years, that every time you hear the word PR, if it's not advertising, it is somebody who is screwed up, who has their people spinning. Which is not necessarily what PR is at all. It's much more than that.
That's sure not how we think about it, but I know that that's the perception.
Right, and I want to talk about what the perception is versus what the reality is.
Okay.
And so the big deal is why I wanted to call you, and I get you on this week. This is very rare that we have someone on within a week. Usually it's several weeks out. We've got the Representative Anthony Weiner, which, I thought I liked him as a personality. I don't necessarily agree with his politics. I don't necessarily agree with the things that he believes in. But as a representative, his personality type was the kind of guy I wanted.
He's very passionate about what he does, and I think he's accomplished quite a bit, so this is very unfortunate.
Yeah, but he also doesn't take any guff. Now I sound like my dad. He doesn't take any guff. He doesn't take any crap from other opponents. He certainly doesn't allow the media to push him around. He'll chastise them when they ask stupid questions or if they interrupt.
I saw a clip of the firefighter healthcare coverage situation just this week. So
where he's spitting and yelling.
Yes.
But that, whether you agree or disagree, and then that
passionate.
I like that.
Yeah.
So then he does something that I consider to be a colossal, stupid, fireable offense. Even for a representative, I do feel that this ends up being true, and I'm not going to go into the details. We all know he sent. For years, he's been doing this. He's been sending tweets. He's been sending pictures to young ladies, married or not married.
That's right.
It doesn't bother me that, it kind of bothers me, but it doesn't bother me that when he was doing it when he wasn't married. He's a single guy, but he's also in a position of power. He's allowing himself to be blackmailed possibly and to be,
You're putting yourself in a very vulnerable position, and I think you didn't realize that.
And then all of a sudden he gets married, and now he's really doing it.
Yeah.
He's still doing it. As a PR person, we'll say you were representing Representative Weiner, so that's representing twice. Obviously, he's not telling his folks what's going on.
That sure appears to be the case.
I mean, they can't know. If they knew, they would put a stop to it, don't you think?
Yes, I do think that, and I think from the appearance of his first denouncement of the whole thing, denying that he had done anything, it appears that his PR team was trying to tell him how to do the right thing. You always tell people that if there's a crisis, you get out front, you are transparent, you don't let the story shape itself. So he was following their instructions, but apparently not being upfront with them about the fact that he had actually done this. So that was a colossal mistake. How you handle a situation like this in the first 24 hours makes all the difference in the perception. I'm not saying that he might have been able to get off scot-free if he had come out right away.
He was definitely not.
But he has exacerbated the situation so much by waiting and finally coming out and admitting it later.
And the worst part about it for me, because I think it's a judgment issue. Like I said, for politics, they can go with moral, whatever. I think it's a judgment issue. Just a couple months ago, there was another representative. I believe his name is Charles Scott. All he sent was a shirtless photo.
A shirtless photo of himself, and he resigned immediately when it came out.
Immediately. So there is almost a template of, if you get caught doing stupid things, this is what you probably should do, because that guy he has time away from the media to regroup and reform it.
You can rise from the ashes. I mean, look at Elliot Spitzer. He has a television show now.
Yeah, and I thought that was hilarious. That's the first thing he leads with is political scandal that has to do with sex, and that you would think that he'd be, of all people, if he ever wants to get back into the politics, would try to maybe make that lower down in the priority list.
But he probably knows that he doesn't have much choice. All eyes are on him about a situation like this, so they want to know what he has to say.
And now he becomes the official expert.
Exactly, firsthand.
So first off, the right away, don't do these things. obviously the number one, but
Clearly.
but you don't have a choice. You can't really control all the crazy things a client potentially could do.
Yes.
And we're just talking about an individual now. We'll talk about corporations, which is a different scenario. But as an individual, you can't control what they do because they're going to do stupid things.
Right.
And quite frankly, depending on who they are, some of these things actually works out for them. I mean, if you think about Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian, they wouldn't be anywhere without a sex videotape out there.
That's true. It's helped their careers.
Yeah, but obviously people who are already in power, this is going to be very damaging. So now that they've already done it, your first suggestion, which I always tell people anyways, never lie.
Never lie.
Because you have to remember.
And when you're backed into a corner, you feel like you're not lying or no one will ever find out. It's just absurd in the era of social media to think that people are not going to find out.
Well, it's not even just social media. You'll see people lie on TV and they forget that there's videotape.
Exactly.
I mean,
there's always something that will come back and bite you. There's a video somewhere. There's a recording. Somebody took a picture of you doing it with their camera phone.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
So basically, you would prefer to get in front of a story than to, obviously, so you can manage the situation more.
Absolutely.
And what's the best way of doing that, so to speak?
Well, get in front of it by coming out immediately and admitting that this is you. I think he made a mistake when he finally did make his admission by taking too many questions. There were shock jock plants in the room asking lewd and disgusting questions. That did not help his case either.
So you're saying a better scenario would have been, A, make the statement, no questions, and then maybe go on a specific show where you have a little more one-on-one.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about random questions from crazy people.
That's right. Go somewhere where you're going to get a fair hearing and can tell your story. Then figure out what you're going to do to make amends, whether this is going into rehab, launching your own investigation or agreeing to an investigation as to whether you've broken the law, because he's insisting that he hasn't. I don't know how he knows how old all of these girls are that he's been corresponding with.
Yeah, I go by their profile, which, in a court of law, if it was just me, some guy who went in to go meet a girl, not a politician, and she's not 16, but I said, oh, well, that doesn't matter. So I don't think he fully understands that. I think it's a little bit of arrogance, too. I think he thinks he's slightly above the law, that he's not going to get caught, and if he does, he's already in a position where he can finagle.
Well, he did think that. I'm not sure if he thinks that today.
Well, yeah. So, let's move off, because it's obviously you don't want to lie. You want to get out in front of it as best you can and as early as possible. If you can, eliminate questions, but you're going to try to find. Now, some means you have to cultivate media connections early.
Yes, you should have relationships with people, but when you do something like this, you do want to create an atmosphere where they give you the benefit of the doubt, but if you've done it and you go back to some major reporter with whom you've been dealing, they're still going to be disappointed in you because they are people, and in fairness, they're going to have to ask you the hard questions.
If they're worth their salt.
Yes.
If they're true journalists.
Yes.
Because that's where the softball questions come in, and hopefully I'm giving you a couple, but not too many.
Yeah. Now, however, if there's a situation where you've made a mistake or where you're being blamed for something that you didn't do, you do have a lot better chance with those media if you've cultivated them over the years and built the trust.
Like say here in Houston, Roger Clemens. Roger
Yeah.
Clemens still denies that he's done anything wrong as far as steroids. He does have supporters on his side that are in the media here in Houston.
That's right.
Not necessarily nationally, but in Houston. So as far as that goes, that's that kind of situation where he's been maybe falsely accused. We don't know. And so he's got these champions on his side, so to speak.
Yes. And he's still claiming his innocence. That could very well be. But again, I caution, the truth ultimately will be found in pretty much any situation.
Now, there's a saying that, I've heard different scenarios where if someone's going to accuse you of something, and especially if it's outlandish, and it's not true, you just ignore them. But I find I don't think that's really a good strategy to say, because it's just going to keep going. A lot of people say, well, it's not worth responding to.
There are situations like that. If it's something so absurd, or somebody who's only trying to gain credibility by forcing you to respond, you are essentially bringing yourself down to their level. So you need to monitor it carefully, and this is an important thing in issues management, crisis preparedness. You always need to understand what everybody's saying about you, and that's no longer just in the print media and television. It is the blogs. You have to have your finger on the pulse, but decide carefully when and if you are going to respond.
So what would you say would be more valid a response to something it was just like, I'm not going to respond to that? Because the moment they say I'm not going to respond to that, it makes it sound like they're
We always
guilty.
tell people don't say no comment, but for example, celebrities get attacked on things, and they say there was an author who was attacked by someone, and she pretended like she didn't know who he was. It's sort of like a slap back in the face. So there are things that you can do, but if it's a business being accused of somebody by some activist, you would say something like, we stand behind our record of environmental performance. But you don't have to respond to them. I mean, look at Obama. For the longest time, he refused to respond about the birth certificate, so Donald Trump crowed that he was responsible for Obama releasing his birth certificate, and then he demanded to see his school records. So it's like Trump suddenly felt he had power over Obama. So you are kind of relegating yourself if you do that in some cases.
Okay, now, since most of the listeners here are going to either be small business owners or they work for a corporation, because I don't think a lot of them are celebrities. If they are, please come on the show.
But I don't have any celebrity clients
yeah,
either.
so, but I wanted to bring it on because I thought it was most relevant this week.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of situations where they're going to need PR. Like in Europe right now, there's the big E. coli situation going on. They've had it here in the United States, and a lot of agriculture situations have to deal with PETA. I have a good friend of mine who is an advocate. She's she works in agriculture and is an advocate for them, and it basically tries to, if there's lies being said by one side, like PETA or something, she shows what the reality is.
Well, someone like PETA is very powerful. So I did not mean to say you never answer anyone. You just have to pick your battles and decide which ones are worth it. But with a powerful organization or someone essentially that could do you damage and people start believing what they're saying, you need to do it.
Well, okay, we'll use your husband who runs the restaurant.
Yeah.
Someone gets food poisoning. Maybe they didn't get it there, and I'm sure they didn't.
Of course they didn't. Don't be ridiculous.
But we'll say that someone is claiming that.
We would absolutely take that seriously, of course.
Right.
But you have to get out there and say that and not just ignore the person until it gets worse and the health department is swarming the restaurant.
Right, because I think that a lot of people do believe that, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm confident we didn't do anything wrong, so I'm just going to ignore the problem.
Yes.
And it'll go away.
Absolutely. So speaking of small businesses, one thing that small or growing or entrepreneurial businesses don't think about is how they can prevent crises. They need to really do a risk assessment. There might be employee issues that you should be concerned about, protecting your own employees with safety policies and that kind of thing, employee misconduct. Say you don't have a policy on using cell phones in the car. One of your employees is in his pickup and he's on the cell phone and plows into a school bus. If you had had a policy on cell phones and he wasn't using his cell phone, you could have potentially averted this crisis, or at least people would know that is in your policy, even if somebody's disrespecting your policy.
Well, sure, like a small business, and I've worked with a lot of small businesses. I've owned a couple small businesses, but I work in a small business. They not necessarily have the HR experience to know they have to have policies.
Right.
I mean, sometimes they don't even have employee records.
Right.
All they have is a social security number.
Right.
And they pay the person, they pay their taxes, and they forget that when they fire somebody for insubordination, but there's no record to back that up, they can end up getting in trouble for that.
Absolutely.
So how would you go about making a risk assessment plan for especially a small business who's not necessarily familiar with what to do?
Well, this isn't some huge bureaucratic thing. You just sit down with leadership and say, okay, what kinds of things could happen here? We have employees out in their cars. We need to look at driver safety, cell phone safety. We have consumers, and we have a product that could potentially, if it's contaminated in some way, make them sick. Do we need to do something about that? Reputational risk. What if there's some kind of misconduct? What if there's some government claim against us? There are natural disasters. What if we get a new Allison this year? Do you have like a business continuity plan where you are locked out of your office, all your computers are there because of security? How are you going to continue doing business and serving your customers?
And explain how a natural disaster situation could end up being a PR situation. Because I know, like, we'll take right off the bat Japan. Mm-hmm. Every time I hear from the Japanese government, it's always they're apologizing for their initial reports or their last report. Because apparently everything's twice as bad, but they're only saying it's half as much.
Yeah, that is one rule, by the way, in crisis management, you never speculate. If you're not sure of a fact, you don't release that information. And this is something that people pressure you and pressure you and pressure you. Well, could it have been this? Is it this? Is it more than this? Is it less than this? Suddenly, you're backed into a corner providing a figure or speculating that, yes, this could have been the cause, and then it's hard to take that back. So no speculation in a crisis.
Okay. And so when you're doing that risk analysis, you sit everybody down. I'm a big advocate of everybody talking about what could go wrong.
Yeah, figure out what they are. Business continuity, as I said. How are we going to serve our customers if we can't get into our offices? How are we going to pay our employees if we've got 2 weeks where we have no computers available? And a lot of companies have a backup safety plan of going somewhere else and still being able to function. And then there are environmental and human rights issues. You just need to think about all of these.
So I see it as like a lot more people not necessarily think of these things, especially backups and such.
Yep.
But we'll take another example from another corporation where they had an issue, but they also had people take advantage of the issue.
Yeah.
Like we talked about Toyota. Now Toyota had an issue with their gas pedals and maybe the way
right.
But they also had a couple, I think 1 or 2 at least, major claims that made national news that were completely false.
Right.
It was some gentleman was claiming that the car he was driving down the highway and it just completely accelerated for no reason and he hit someone from behind.
Right.
How do you deal with the truth, which is yes, there is an issue with our cars and we're going to need to recall, as well as people taking advantage of your situation?
Well, there are going to be examples of people taking advantage of situations. We see it all the time if there are environmental issues, even in natural disasters. When there's money to be had, people want it. But I think the most important part is serving those who have been affected. Certainly people like Pepsi with the syringe in the can really went on the offensive and gave tours of their bottling plant to show how this was simply not possible. Same with Wendy's and the finger in the chili. You do have to go on the offensive on those that you're positive are not attributable to you.
So don't hesitate to defend yourself.
As long as you're sure you're right.
Especially when you've already got an issue, like I said, like Toyota already had an issue that they knew that they had to fix.
Right.
So then they compile it with people lying about certain situations. You have to, even if you feel bad about the thing you actually did wrong.
Yeah.
You've got to go on the offensive.
That's right. But by the same token, don't be in such denial that you are looking like the bad guy. For example, if you are accused of an environmental misstep, someone that I worked with recently was accused of an environmental misstep. They did not think it was them, but they assumed responsibility for taking care of the problem. You have to have some compassion. You can't worry only about the legal aspects. You have to have some compassion for the people who might be affected.
Well, it's not only are you legally responsible, but is it the perception of responsibility?
That's right.
Because that's mostly what PR is dealing with, is trying to make sure that the perception of your product, of your service, of your client is an accurate one.
That's right.
Especially in a positive light.
That's right.
Unless it's, oh yeah, he's actually a jerk and a horrible person. Let's try to put a spotlight not on the CEO, but on the president of a company or such like that.
That's right.
Now, for small businesses, what do you find is a more recurring issue when it comes to crisis management, besides the fact that they're maybe not planning? But as far as dealing with public relations, dealing with the PR, that you find that happens a lot that people don't really think about?
I haven't worked with a lot of small businesses, but observations from looking in the media is just someone not having experience dealing with the media, not knowing how to respond, so they say no comment, they hang up the phone, they give a gruff response, and again, they're not helping their cause by doing that. They think it'll go away if they just insulate themselves.
Well, and now we'll move off of the when things go badly, because that's only a small, tiny percentage, but it's the most public percentage, unfortunately, of what you do.
Right.
Where is the huge benefit as far as public relations for a company? Is it more of just branding? Is it more community interaction, so people will be more accepting of their image, of their
right.
product?
Public relations is two-way communication. So it's making sure that someone is not developing their story for why people should appreciate them across their audiences in a vacuum. It is community outreach to make sure that companies know what's important to their constituents, and they shape their programs around those constituents. It's two-way communication, developing that benefit of the doubt, good rapport with people. So again, if something negative does happen, or if you need something, or if you want somebody to respect your product, it's the two-way interaction.
Or you have a new product and you want to make sure people know about it.
Absolutely.
You've already built the relationship. They're like, hey, I like Coke. Let's try new Coke.
Yeah.
Didn't work, but it was still, people talked about new Coke up until they tasted it.
That's right. And it's not just media relations, because the media is not the audience. The media is one of the conduits to your key audiences.
And obviously the consumer in this situation.
The consumer or business to business, the businesses that you're hoping to deal with. The community where you're trying to build a new pipeline, for example.
And with social media being such a major contributor to public relations now, not only is it just about telling about your brand, your service, but it's also talking and communicating with your audience, your consumers. Now they have a say. They can respond. I mean...
That's right. And I'm finding a lot of companies are very resistant to using social media. They feel like it's going to cause them to lose control. But I have news for them. You are not in control with social media. If you don't develop a Facebook page, there's going to be a Facebook page out there about you that someone else has developed. If you're not following what people are saying about you on blogs and contributing and going back and forth, they're just telling the story without your perspective on things.
And also, if you would just ignore one person who you think
that person can be very powerful. Bloggers now, even without necessarily having any credentials, can have as much following as some newspaper reporter.
Well, or they're just you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Like Kevin Smith was recently on a Southwest flight, and
yes.
He's a little heavy.
Yes.
And Southwest kind of put their policy in place, but it was kind of even though he was trying to be as accommodating as possible, like, hey, I'll buy another ticket, I'll do all this stuff, but they kind of made an issue out of it. At least this is not.
That's his story.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yep.
But that's also a lower level frontline issue. It may not be company policy. It was interpreted by this particular employee.
That's right.
And all he had to do was start tweeting. And next thing you know, it's everywhere.
That's right.
In fact, it was actually everywhere while he was at the airport.
Yep.
I guess he was telling about how managers or the general manager was running down the hallway or the concourse, wherever he was, to come get him to fix the situation. But it's that simple now. I mean, a little person like me who I don't have many followers. You know, when my cable goes out, the first thing I go out is, I call and find out what's going on. But while I'm calling, tweet.
You've got some power, don't you?
Well, no, it's just a matter of I think some of like Comcast is very proactive. Not that I agree or disagree with their service or whatever. I'm not promoting them, but I do know I have them. It's the only thing I can get.
Yep.
If I put out hashtag Comcast is down and I'm waiting 45 minutes and what's going on, I will get a response.
You have to know what people are saying about you, and you have to respond. But I want to tell a funny story about assigning the wrong level of person to respond. Mark Jacobs had assigned an intern to be in charge of their Twitter account.
And Mark Jacobs?
The designer, the fashion designer. Okay. So I believe they have normally a social media person, but that person was absent, and they assigned some intern who melted down, got stressed out, and wrote on his final night as the intern, "You guys and gals have no idea how difficult Robert is. I'm only an intern. My last day is tomorrow. I won't be tweeting this if not. Good luck. I pray for you all. If you get the job, I'm out of here. See ya." And then it goes on.
It sounds like that flight attendant who grabbed 2 beers and jumped out the slide and said...
Except he got arrested. I don't believe this kid got arrested.
Well, yeah, he broke some aviation laws.
I think so.
But I think what happens is they do assign social media to...
They think, that's the kid thing, let them do it. And it's not.
You have to have policies in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a situation, or actually more of a resource that, regular folks can go look up? What policy should I have? Because a lot of people don't even know. Like, I know a lot of my clients aren't even on Twitter.
Yeah. You can Google social media policy, and essentially it's telling your employees what they may or may not do as a representative of the company. Some companies let various people tweet about the company or blog about it. Others have guidelines about this. It's just making sure that there are parameters there so this doesn't become the Wild West, even though it kind of is outside of your company.
Oh, it's definitely the Wild West out in Twitterverse. And then one other thing is that when you go we went from an individual, a celebrity most likely, we went to big company, small company, but now we're talking about individuals, just regular folks. I don't think the younger kids understand about public relations and posting on Facebook.
Oh, yes. before I even interview someone for a position here, I Google them and see what their blog looks like. I see what their Twitter looks like. If they have some weird, salacious type, handle or whatever they call it these days.
Like Big Booty 49
exactly.
or something. Yeah.
These things are problematic. And also you can create your own crisis. There is a UCLA student, you've probably heard about it, who went on a rant on YouTube about a certain ethnic group at her school and how they were making her mad. I checked it today. It has had nearly 1.2 million hits so far.
Yeah, she went on, I'll say it, she went on a very racist rant about Asians.
Yeah.
About Asians taking up time in the library or something
like,
and talking,
yeah.
and then did the horrible, stereotypical Asian bad accent.
Yep. And she's caused some problems for herself.
Yeah, I don't think they revoked her scholarship, but there was something that she lost out on. I think it was a job or an internship or something. And it's just a matter of, you got to remember that if you put it online, it exists everywhere.
Yeah, you can create personal crises just like a company's crisis by misusing social media.
And is there a thing that you can do to kind of keep yourself in check?
Don't do it late at night.
So sleepy or drunk texting.
Exactly, no.
But it's one of these things where, I don't really worry about it too much. I mean, I understand. I have a wife who will start reading the things I'm starting to type, and she'll be like, "Don't put that." It's political stuff. She's like, because she works in a very not very political charge, but it's a block of one type of political party that she works with.
Yeah.
And it kind of conflicts with my political thing. And she's worried about if I put this out there, because they're so extreme, that not that them personally, but she knows there's people like them out there that I'm going to lose business on one or two things.
Absolutely. People take this stuff very personally, and it's not just you chatting with friends. You have followers, you don't know who they are. I shouldn't admit this, but I have a Twitter account that I've never tweeted, and I have a dozen followers.
Yeah. It's and
I don't know them.
Well, a lot of them are robots. A lot of us, you have to go through every so often.
So I can't write anything derogatory about robots then.
Well, you probably could. As long as you retweet them. I find that if you use keywords, every time I'm not a big fan of the law of attraction. That's just me. I'm not a big secret fan. So anytime I say something that disproves the law of attraction or shows why I do not like them in a logical, reasonable way, I will get dozens of followers all of a sudden who love the law of attraction, and I'm like, you have no idea what you're doing because you're not getting what you want following me. I'm much more of a realistic person, so if you want a realistic person, those kind of followers come out of the blue. But you also have to be careful about who's following you.
That's right.
Do you suggest, taking a look and seeing if there's not only competition, but advocates of opposition? Like if you're a farmer, should you be looking at seeing if there's particular extreme PETA people following you?
Well, sure. And if you make the decision that that's okay with you, you just make sure that you're getting the message out there in a way that isn't going to be used against you later.
Right. So I was just, my point was, I was trying to see if you felt like you should just eliminate those people because there may be a problem, or you should take, have confidence in your information.
There's going to be a way around eliminating those people. Somebody who you don't know who they are and is affiliated with them will find a way in. It's just like all the oil company shareholders meetings. People come up in limos and suits, and suddenly they're advocates for, I believe it was Greenpeace.
Okay, yeah, because that's what I'm saying. You can't. So basically,
you don't really know who they are. So the best policy is not writing anything that you regret, just like saying anything you would regret to the newspaper.
Okay, and it's the same thing with if you have a corporate blog of some sort. Now, do you advocate responding to negative comments on blogs? Like if you have a corporate blog and someone is saying something?
Yes.
And so you get the copyright people out there to word it just right, or do you just let your social media person handle it? Or
I think it depends on the nature of and that's why there needs to be someone there with judgment. If it's something that's just a complaint that it doesn't have, for example, legal or big reputational repercussions, maybe you just answer, but you take more care with something that is more serious.
Now, if I'm a small business and I've got this great idea, I've got a great product, and I want to partner up with somebody. This would be a great situation for this is where community outreach really benefits as far as PR. How do you go around and make those connections as a PR individual? I mean, if I was going to hire you for PR, how do you make your connections with people that would help me or help your clients? What do you do
Well, it depends on the type of client. For example, if somebody wants to promote that they are involved in sustainable initiatives and they want business-to-business clients to know about this, maybe we would go out and get the story of sustainability, put it on their website, put it on their intranet, have them speak at different speaking engagements, work with the newspaper to tell the story if they'd be interested in the story. Every program is kind of customized based on whether it's a business-to-business client, business-to-consumer, and what their goals are. But basically, you write a plan. You sit with them, do some in-depth discussions about what their goals are, who their audiences are, what their messages are, and then figure out the best way to communicate that. And usually it also starts with some research, looking at the potential customers.
Oh, so once you know who the audience is, then you go to find out how does the audience get their information.
Yes.
And obviously over time you will accumulate a large network.
Yeah.
And that's why people hire you, because you're an instant network for them.
Well,
to some degree. Like me, I am nobody. I have a very small network. And if I had a new initiative...
No, we help you create a network.
Right.
We don't bring you a network. We find people who are interested in you and talk about you.
Well, that's what I meant, is
Yes.
that you have a network, and of the ones that are relevant to me,
Our network
you'll
is
introduce...
the world,
Yeah,
and then we find the ones that are appropriate for you.
All right. And how can people find you if they really want to get some information, they want to maybe even hire you?
Hey, thanks. www.kimberlypublicaffairs.com.
And you do all sorts of public relations, not just damage control.
Yeah, we do crisis and issues management, but we work with a lot of startups. We work in a lot of industries and just try to help people position themselves the way they want to be positioned in the marketplace.
Well, hopefully I didn't say anything that'll get me in trouble today. I'm sure
Or
I
me.
did. I think you're safe. But I certainly appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That ends another reality check with Craig Price. I so wanted to say that interview was starting to peter out. But see, these are the kind of the Weiner puns that we've been haunted with for weeks. Go away, Anthony Weiner. Go away. Of course, you can always find us at realitycheckpodcast.com. Sign up for the feed. Email me, Craig at speakercraigprice.com. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next week. Thank you.